Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. No better time to unveil a horrible debt ceiling deal than Memorial Day weekend, when very few people are paying attention. Republicans in control of the House are evidently prepared to allow Joe Biden to continue the COVID spending spree forever. McCarthy signing off, at least verbally, on a deal that cuts back spending to 2022 levels. The only problem is 2022 was a fiscal disaster for this country. We spent $1.4 trillion more than we brought in 2022. A horrific budget, unsustainable, but a dream, of course, for the malignant tumor that is establishment Washington. This weekend, Kevin McCarthy is spinning this as hard as he can, bragging about meager pullbacks on COVID funds, the IRS budget, and some minor changes to welfare requirements.
We finally were able to cut spending. We're the first Congress to vote for cutting spending year over year. So you cut that back, you fully fund the veterans, you fully fund defense, but you take that non-defense spending all the way back lower than 22 levels. Now you get work requirements for TANF and SNAP, where the Democrats said that was a red line.
All of that sounds great in a soundbite. Doesn't actually do much to fix this massive problem that we have. And actual fiscal Republicans are pointing out the very obvious. This two-year deal will add $4 trillion more to our national debt. That's what the holdout was over. Still $4 trillion more in just a couple years. Although the pandemic is over, the spending insanity that was ushered in by COVID-19 is evidently here to stay. This is one of those rare moments where party really doesn't matter at all anymore. And those moments are increasingly less rare, by the way. Both political parties love spending your money. The D.C. Uniparty, as they call it, exposing itself once again. Very few actually want to make government smaller in this country and spend less of your money and give you more of your money back, such as Senator Rand Paul, who is actually a fiscal conservative, who tweeted out, "Fake conservatives agree to fake spending cuts. Deal will increase mandatory spending, 5% increase military spending, 3% maintain current non-military discretionary spending at post-COVID levels. No real cuts to see here. Conservatives have been sold out once again." Congressman Tim Burchett, another real fiscal conservative, put it this way.
We've got to get back to some fiscal sanity in this country. It's just that much. We cannot keep spending at these levels. Again, if we went back to levels pre-COVID, we would have a surplus now, and we'd be paying down our debt. What have we added since before COVID that is so important right now? Nothing. We need to get back to reality and stop spending money out of control. That's the bottom line. And if it takes taking a vote, I'll vote. I voted to shut the government down under Trump, and I do it under Biden.
But this is not a government shutdown. This is a default. So you're saying no matter what happens, you'll vote for default?
The reality is not a default. It's a delay. Just like in business, you put something off, you pay it off. If you can't pay it off this week, we pay it off next week. And this is irresponsible for us to say anything other than that.
Now, everybody paying attention would listen to a soundbite like that and say that that's just insanity. To say something like that is atrocious. It's not. That's the reality that we're in. Congressman Dan Bishop tweeting out a $4 trillion debt ceiling increase. That's what the Speaker's negotiators are going to bring back to us. Of course it is. It's amazing we expected anything else. At this rate, the CBO estimates this country will hold nearly $50 trillion in debt in just 10 years. And it'll probably be worse, as neither side actually wants to spend less money. And whenever the fiscal hawks try to commandeer the ship, you always get the same sob story in Washington.
Donald Trump presided over the third largest deficit increase in the debt ever.
Under Donald Trump, we raised the debt ceiling 3 times.
The debt went up 40% when Donald Trump was president.
Republicans racked up $8 trillion in debt under Donald Trump, 1/4 of everything we owe.
Yeah, he also cut taxes and then got COVID-19. So there's that thing. And here's the question about it. Why don't Democrats ever weep this hard for the next generations in this country? the ones who will be forced to pay back all of this money our political class used to buy votes. By the time our youngest are adults, the national debt in this country will be in actual parity, a number even more incomprehensible than it is now. Today, the number is so high and so hopeless, nobody really even talks about it anymore. National debt stories get very little play because they're widely considered to be boring. But the reality of what they're doing, what we're doing in this country, is anything but boring. It is horrifying. This is not World War II. This is not justifiable to spend money like this. To bring in $5 trillion a year and spend $7 is not possible. You can't do this for very long without a collapse. The American government needs a drastic reduction in size and spending before we're forced to take a very heavy dose of medicine in a moment that won't care about crying politicians screaming about what the beneficiaries of their latest spending frenzy might lose. Dennis Prager joins me now to talk more about this. Sir, it's good to have you on. I spoke to Congressman Bob Good earlier today. He was enraged by this deal. He said he doesn't know if Republicans don't want to win or they just don't know how.
I have a darker view than he does or most of my fellow Republicans. The American people, as a general rule, like any other people, are not prepared to take cuts in anything that has to do with benefits. I have said all of my life that the addiction to benefits is harder to break than an addiction to heroin. I mean that literally. Yeah. It is easier to get off heroin than it is to get off benefits. The president of France, a man of the left, tried to raise the age at which people would begin to receive Social Security, as they would put it in their terms, in any event in France. And he has had massive riots on his hands, even though people live today 10, 15, 20 years longer than they lived when Social Security was enacted. So unless we're prepared to look in the mirror, I don't blame the Republicans. It is a losing proposition to close down the government or default or whatever it might take in order to lower spending. The American people, as a general rule, are prepared to give their children massive debt. I don't know why. Most people love their children. But unless we look in the mirror, there's no solution.
You've watched for a long time. The biggest part of the problem, and you make such a great point, is that they've created all of this as a way of appeasement to the people, as a way to win their votes. Yeah. And once you, I think Reagan said, you're never going to get rid of these things. Once you create something in government, you can never peel it back. But it's right. I don't know, how do you formulate a government? How do you formulate a system where you can't do this? Because this is obviously going to be, I think, our fiscal demise is going to be just from everything we've created and the inability to ever reverse it, to ever get people off of these programs and to end all this debt. Because if you really look at it, it's entitlement that has to be reformed. And nobody's willing to touch that because it's political suicide.
Okay, so if it's political suicide, that means that the American people are not prepared to do that. That's what it means. Political suicide means you won't get a vote. I don't remember the first person to have said it, but it might have been said actually in ancient Greece. It might have been said in the modern West. The day politicians realize that they could buy votes is the end of democracy, is the beginning of the end of democracy as we know it. This is the fatal flaw, and I'm very pro-democracy. There's nothing better that I know of, except actually what America created, which was a republic rather than a democracy. But nevertheless, the moment you have direct vote, people will allow themselves to have their votes bought with benefits. This is the tragedy of the human condition. And it was exactly why the founders founded the country with the proposition that freedom is not possible without limited government. But most Americans, like most French and everybody else, do not want limited government.
That's exactly right. Any possible way that they could create to try and railroad the growth of this government, to just create roadblocks to it, they implemented. But over enough years, enough time, the system has figured out a way to get around those roadblocks. I want to talk about the president for a moment. He was in this moment right now. He's in a horrible situation politically. He's in a country that's totally lost faith in him, as CNN says here. Take a look.
Horrible news. Horrible for Joe Biden in our new CNN poll. While the president leads his Democratic competitors by a huge margin, 2/3 of all of the American people surveyed, 66% of the public, say that a Biden victory would either be a setback or a disaster for the United States.
This was a very vulnerable moment for the president, and he still gets a big win here. And again, it's because I don't think either side knows how to fix this problem, so they just continue it on.
Well, again, I feel like the guy who's just come from an AA meeting is trying to inject some sobriety into the discussion. It's irrelevant if 66% of the American people believe that Biden would be a disaster. So long as liberals vote left, liberals are the only group in the country that do not vote their values. Leftists vote their values, and conservatives vote their values. Liberals vote the most anti-liberal values in American history, the values of the left. Liberals believe in racial integration. Leftists believe in black dormitories and black graduations, but it doesn't matter. The liberals will continue to vote for the left. There is nothing the left can do, including teaching children that they're neither boy nor girl. They'll decide for themselves later. Nothing. There is no damage the left can do. There is no anti-liberal legislation they could pass that would cause any number of liberals to stop voting Democrat. So it is irrelevant how unpopular Joe Biden is, as long as liberals continue to vote for the demise of liberalism.
That's a good point. Dennis Prager, always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.